So, John, the main question for you today is what is the one daily thing a founder should do to create new opportunities?
So I interpret this as new opportunities to bring a new product to market, right? You're thinking about the value you're bringing to market. You're thinking about who you're bringing it to, and you have to get out there and prepare yourself for rejection by continually asking potential customers, is this valuable? So my opportunities are how many people can I talk to and how quickly and what am I going to get out of it?
Mm, okay, interesting. So you have completely interpreted this very differently from what I thought initially.
Interesting, interesting.
You were speaking in a space where opportunity is not some diffuse gold you have to find or diamonds you have to look for places you don't know where to go. Opportunities are simply you deciding, but it's way more practical and way less opportunistic in a sense.
I see what you're getting at. Yeah. I mean, if we use the word opportunistic versus opportunity, there's a slight difference between the two things, right? To be opportunistic is to be open and flexible to go, down a path you might not expect that is suddenly presented to you, or that you have created yourself, right? Whereas, when I think about opportunity, I think of it, differently, right? There's lots of opportunities. Which opportunities am I going to pursue in an optimistic way, or opportunistically? So there's a little bit about words in there that are interesting too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. In that sense, also, by definition, there can be no lack of opportunity.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So then you create it and you see where it just takes off in a bigger way.
That's right, because you don't know. I mean, part of the excitement, yet part of the struggle of doing something new is most of the time you don't know. You don't know if this idea of a solution to a problem you have is actually going to work for anybody. And you absolutely have to keep on iterating through and testing it on different people, right? And part of, getting very practical is how many people can you talk to, right? And how do you find those people? And how creative can you be? And the more you can broadcast out what you're doing, the more opportunity you're starting to create for yourself to prove your thesis, whether it's right or wrong, whether you need to change it a little bit, whether you should pack up and go home or go raise more money, right? So yeah, I'm trying to say one of the core points is to be relentless about this, right? You can't just sit in the proverbial garage, invent something and think you're correct in its value, right? Rarely does that work, right? I love the example of the Segway, which is this beautiful machine to get a single person around, but it was an utter failure in the marketplace,
Yeah.
right? They didn't go actually ask people what was valuable. And Lime scooters and Tier scooters have actually answered that question, right? Cheap disposable scooters that I can pick up and leave anywhere, that has value in a city to get a single person around. But the Segway was expensive, over-engineered, never found, really never found a market. In my own humble investigation, the inventor, built the whole thing without really talking to people. And I think that's one lesson that founders really need to get sharp on is constantly talking to people because you never know where you're going to find the right feedback. And it's good to hear 100 no's as fast as you can.
Yeah, I think the number 100 is really important to glue into your head as a founder.
Sure.
That like it's 10 is just like zero. You have to have some kind of volume for feedback to be effective.
I completely agree with that. And if I talk to you about being a salesperson, I would say you're going to get maybe two responses out of 100,
Yeah.
right? A 2% response rate. So if you talk to 10 people, you might not get any, right?
Yeah. All right. So big volume. Volume is your friend when you're looking for feedback to see validate your ideas and to see if there was opportunity in that idea. So now I know
Yes.
from your life that you have yourself been very smart in creating opportunities and getting yourself into environments that didn't necessarily fit your CV, but you could add value to it. What did that take from you? You mentioned earlier, like you have to let go of your ego.
There's a few things here. There's both nature and nurture, right? So on the nature side, I'm very comfortable being uncomfortable, and I am able to, subdue my ego and just walk up to strangers, right? And talk to people and tell the narrative. And I'm not afraid that somebody will say, that's a horrible idea, or I find no value in that. That's okay for me. That's also, again, part of my nature. On the nurture side, it's practicing, right? So practice, practice, practice makes perfect. The more I tell a narrative, whether it's 5 seconds, 50 seconds, or 1,000 seconds, the better I'm going to get at it. And again, you get into a virtuous cycle of feedback, right? And you can't do any of this successfully if you don't put yourself out there and force yourself, even if it's not natural, to force yourself to tell a lot of people what you're doing. There's easy places to start with family and friends and colleagues you already know,
Yeah.
right? Easy place to start. But
All right.
then you have to take that next step into the uncomfortable zone, telling strangers.
All right. So there you have it. Keep it simple. Create lots of volume, lots of feedback for your ideas until you know exactly which value you're bringing to who, and then just bring it on.
That's right. And then be prepared to scale.
Be prepared to scale. Awesome. Thank
Yep.
you very, very much, John. Appreciate it.
Sure.